have you in here.
Before we start, ma'am, first thing is that most of the people think that gender-based violence is just another sort of violence which is normal. But what makes this different? Can you please explain it in simple so that our viewers can understand what is actually gender-based violence?
Starting with the gender-based violence, first we need to segregate the very word what gender-based violence means. So first thing with gender, we have always stereotyped it for women. We always look at it as women is having any kind of a violence that's happening, it's either women, girl, that's what we have stereotyped it. But when we talk about gender, when we see our constitution, gender is a word which talks about male, female and the third gender. Now we have started, since we recognize the LGBTQ, that also comes in the category of gender. Now, basically identity, how you identify yourself. Okay. Now the gender-based violence, going ahead with that, is any kind of violence which is happening where your dignity is corrupt. You are not getting any social, your social appearance or anything, that is your freedom is curtailed. We called it as violence only, not just beating. Earlier it was like you're getting beaten up black and blue, that was violence. But now that is not the point. The point is even your freedom getting curtailed is violence. And looking at the NCRB report of 2022, we have seen there has been so many violences. And why we scale it down, because it has been always seen in that report that it is female, girls and the transgender who has been subjected to violence. Now, coming to the male violence that we were talking about, it's not that it's not happening with the males, but the report does not suggest that there has been so many increase, or maybe because of the patriarchal society that we stay in, men are not coming up with the reports of the violence. So we have only the reports of women, and that's why we kind of stereotype it, or maybe say we talk about only women in one aspect of it. So this is what in a gist a gender-based violence is all about.
So from the legal perspective, why is this gender-based violence considered to be an infringement of the fundamental right or the basic human right, whereas any other violence is just considered as a form of a private right infringement or a private injury? Why is this given such a huge importance in the legal framework?
See, like you talked about the family or the private thing we talk about. So now violence is something which can happen in open, which can happen in a closed door. So if it's happening in violence, it's opening in a open space, we recognize it, okay, that person is beating, that person is doing something, we recognize this. But now why family and your private, we talk about, came into picture that it is not okay. Law said, the legal aspect said it's not okay if it is happening even inside a closed walls. Okay, so that is why we recognize it and we say that no. We say no, anything. That can be anything. Say you're deprived of economic, sustenance and all. Economically you have been, deprived and let's talk about socially you're deprived. Okay, then monetarily you're deprived, comes into economic only. If all these things are happening in the closed wall also humiliation, anything that you talk, that you humiliate the other person also, if it is happening within a private legal aspect says that it is not okay, and that is why we need to recognize those kinds of violence as well.
So does this mean the law recognizes not just the physical abuse, does it even recognize the emotional and psychological abuse that happens?
Yes, with this mental health awareness, which we are like too much with this thing right now. Earlier, whatever frameworks we had, it was only which was coming to the police or anybody where they had bruises on their bodies, where there was actually the violence could be seen. It was recognized. But then with the mental health, because people are going into depressions, people are going into all sorts of stress, anxiety, everything, which is somewhat a source of violence. So that needed to be recognized also.
So as you just told, the emotional or the psychological abuse, they do not leave any physical scars. unlike the physical abuse which is done. So how does the courts recognize this, and how does it take cognizance of such cases?
Okay. So basically how we talk about the cognizance of the cases, we very well know that cognizance of taking the cases is like you have to go and arrest if there is definitely a visible scar or anything. Okay. But with mental, definitely if it is something which is, like I said, which is somewhere curtailing your freedom, which is not letting you live a dignified life, definitely we can't see that. Words cannot be seen, it can be felt deep down. And depression, it will be very much predominantly there in your reports if you go. Anxiety levels is getting increased. So definitely courts take the police will take cognizance. The court will also has to take a cognizance of all these cases. Law acknowledges, if it doesn't mean if you are not bleeding, if there's no injury. Definitely law acknowledges it, and it comes under the psychological factors like I told you, which is your anxiety, depression, loss of your self-worth, okay, and trauma with that effect. Okay. And now the second thing, what is like, since mental health is so much into picture in these few years have grown, because all these trauma which was not recognized then, people used to only talk about, okay, if it is say domestic violence, definitely there will be beating. Nobody used to talk about the taunts, about the, say, suppression of a person who was economically deprived, did not have a job, had to work under a husband, or maybe stay with the husband, or have to go for each and everything. Now those mental traumas, those anxiety of living with scarcity has developed, and those mental stresses is being acknowledged by legal aspects right now, and they actually address it in the same way as that of, maybe the cases or say the approach to the court will be different, the compensation, the remedy will be a little different, but comparatively it is being acknowledged. So this is how it goes with this.
Can you please walk us through the articles of the Constitution? For example, we have heard about Article 14, 1921, which is generally spoken about. So how are these fundamental rights laying the foundation for giving provisions to protect women from such gender-based violence?
So like you talked about Article 14 and 15. So we already know, we talk about equality before law and equal protection of law. So definitely in these sections we were always talking about the women's, where we had given them reservations, where we had already given them to work in a place and say studies and everything we had already done over there. But now we have also shifted, in the sense we are included transgenders here. We have included men here, and we have also talking about the provisions in Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. We always talk about offences relating to women. We have all sorts of laws which we talk about women. Why not about men? There has to be a gender neutral law which talks about, definitely if a woman is having a domestic violence at home, deprived of economic something, there will be men also. So we don't have laws which talk specific to men as well. There is women, we talk about that, and also like living a dignified life. That is Article 21. Article 21 says we need to have a dignified life. So the same aspect what we are talking about for women can be going for male as well. We need to have laws which implements both as well as transgender.
So does the court recognize these laws which protect women particularly in the same power for the protection of men? So are even men protected under law?
For the recognition of decriminalizing the law of carnal sex, which was an offense at that point of time. And with that Nafte Johar, the basic agenda was regarding the AIDS which was more found in men compared to women. So even the brothels were checked. Why is the AIDS factor going so much? But it later turned out to be that there is no problem with the women having AIDS, and AIDS was checked in men and got to know that there was a carnal sex issue having. That's where the recognition of men came into the picture, and with that what we see is men needed protection, not only women, men needed protection. And after which the High report when decriminalizing it, say the section, we got to know that there was again mental, physical abuse. There were physical abuse as in like when people got to know that okay, you are a gay or you are a lesbian, they started incriminating a lot of things, which was definitely physical abuse as well as mental abuse. Physical we can see in women happening. If we see a woman who is dressed up in a, say, a tomboyish kind of a look, we always have a perception that okay, turns out to be this person is gay. But with men, we don't kind of see that. But yes, again, if they identify themselves or they give their recognition as say that they are gay, they are humiliated in society. They have this fear where they lose their recognition or they will be mistreated in a different way, which was happening with transgenders as well. That is why they were not given work. Even in a work culture, most of the MNCs and all, okay, now that they have included this aspect that however you identify yourself, you will be getting a job. But transgenders, they never have this. Rather than only taking money in the, say, begging, that was the only way they were sustaining themselves. The family would leave them. They will not get any kind of studies. They will, basic necessity, like I talked about dignity. Right to dignity, right to have a personal liberty was actually curtailed from them, and also was happening with the men as well. It was not addressed because obviously we have always pictured men as someone who's a powerful, who's a dominant person in the society. So this is what was the basic agenda which was not getting addressed. Always women's thing was being addressed. We always had NGOs, we had like commissions which was made to support them, but it was not made for men. But later on now we have started with transgender, but we still need to start with men, where the or maybe say commissions which will actually start addressing, where men will not have the shame to come and address their issues.
So, from the legal perspective, just apart from the provisions of the IPC or the BNS currently, we have also come across special acts such as the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act or Protection of Women from Dowry Harassment Act. So, all such acts which are very much specific towards the protection of women from gender-based violence. So, how have such acts brought an impact on the legal discourse? So how have these laws which have been specifically made for the women, how have they impacted the courts, the decisions of the courts, and have there been any changes because of such acts?
So definitely the objective only to bring all these kinds of acts, you generous law, because your criminal law, what we talk about BNS, does not cover each and everything, even the criminal procedural laws. So definitely that's the reason we went for these two acts, which is talking only about that kind of situation which arises, domestic violence and the dowry harassment case. And it was utmost necessity, because women who's been always subjected to suppression, or not suppression I would say, or rather been always portrayed as being submissive, they never came up with their rights. So the basic necessity, I think the objective was fulfilled by getting these two laws into picture. And they have already made it so many provisions for them where a woman can actually come and file a complaint. And they recognize, like I said, physical and mental both abuses are being registered. We have definitely so many cases. I think the NCRB report talks about like more than 15,000 cases for domestic violence, as well as your say dowry harassment cases. So they are being registered. So they have made a very like say that initiative of taking it, making an act has changed the very definition. Cases are being come down because there are harsh punishments. There is imprisonment, there is fine, to not only to the person who is inflicting the pain, also to the family member, even if they obey to such a kind of an act. So I think it's a great initiative. The objective is being resolved. Still, it needs times to, like, be implemented everywhere, because in rural, when we talk urban, yes, people know their rights, they're educated. Rural, they don't know. So these kinds of rights need to be implemented there, and we need to set up legal aid where they can actually come and tell, because this violence happens more in a grassroots level compared to.
So, as you have mentioned about the legal aid, so as a person from the legal academic background, how important do you think is the legal awareness and the legal aid which is being given is important and necessary to prevent such abuse which is done? How important and more than importance, how effective have they been in curbing all such activities which are being done against the women?
So I would say that this initiative of legal aid that was taken, it has not only helped so many families, but have actually helped other people to know their rights. Earlier, the problem was that people did not know their rights even. That they were thought, okay, if we get married to a person, he has the right to beat me. Why? Because I am in a wedlock and that person has a right to beat me. But now, since with legal aid, we tell them, no, you can't. These are things which you'll be liable for punishment. So according to me, and also the stats which says legal aid has helped them, and also giving them a free help, because most of the women will economically be not, they'll be only sustaining with the whatever the husband is earning. So legal aid also help them to go against the husband and tell that correct my husband because he's not doing certain things with me which should be done, like giving them money to sustain themselves, and also like any other things for that matter, even knowing the provisions of the law, which is the basic necessity that a person should know. If the person doesn't know the basic necessity, they will never come up and say that, okay, I knew that I have a right. Now with legal aid, I think this has reached, it still need to reach I think to the majorly to the lower sections where they can know their rights.
So walking through this digital age, we have observed there is a lot of online harassment which has happened, and as per the data which is available, it says that even though this harassment is done, it is basically majorly done against the women. So what does the law protect or give the provisions in order to stop such online harassment? Because even these are the sort of gender-based violence against women itself, though not in physical form, in the online platform.
So we have your Information Technology Act. Now, talking about what kind of violences they are actually including is from section 66C to 67E. And moreover, what happens with these kinds of things is government is definitely trying, and when we see the provisions, this is a different kind of world. In person, if it happens, we can arrest a person, we can put him behind the bars. Now with digital age, it's happening right behind the screen. We don't know who the person is. Maybe with the help of IP address and everything, we might catch. But if a person is outside country, we have a rule and regulation of the outside country. We can't hold them. We can't catch hold of the person. But all these things, government is trying, but it's a different world altogether, and we need to have provisions. What my reading tells me so far is that we still need to implement a lot of rules and regulations, especially regarding cyber attacks on women, on girl child, because there is not just normal things happening on cyber, there are so many things happening, especially relating to trafficking, sexual, deep fakes, where pictures are being morphed by AI, and then again it's being, the people are getting tortured. They don't understand that it is a morphed picture. Most of the time, suicides have happened because of all these things. I remember there were cases regarding internet, blue whale, where children were committing suicides. These are all sorts of cyber attacks, and also they target towards the women. If they have a picture where they put it on social media. Now social media, even if we say it's protected, still they somehow take your picture and they morph it. So these things, I think we need to amend our Information Technology Act more. And yes, there are provisions where women are getting protection. I'm not saying they're not getting protection, but still we need to amend more laws, because every day there is an evolution with say your cybers, so your ITs. So we need to keep amending according to the changes that is coming.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for joining us to the podcast.
Thank you so much.